Hi everyone. In this video we're going to learn the different foramina, fissures, and canals of the skull, or SCB-203. There are many in the skull, but we're only going to name the ones that we need for our exam in SCB-203. Okay. Now, in my previous videos, I explained I like making lists, because I find that if you make a list, then you know how many things you have to deal with and how many you have to remember. Okay. So, for example, if you know 10 of them, then you know, oh, there's 2 more we have to know. So, to me, it's a device that I used when I was an undergraduate student. Now, as I did in my previous videos, I'm going to put the first initial of each to help us as a learning tool. Okay. And again, if you have your own tools, ways of learning things, of course, do it your own way. I've listed these in a specific in groups. Okay. Within each group, it's not that critical of the order, but I put them in groups of 4 to perhaps maybe make it easier to learn them. So in the first group are 6 structures. Okay, and some sound alike, so you got to be careful. We have the infraorbital foramen and the supraorbital foramen. So that means this is below the orbit and this is above the orbit. And a foramen you'll find is pretty much an opening. Okay, and we have a similar structures called the infraorbital fissure and supraorbital fissure. Okay, and these are not just openings, but they're like little crevices, sort of like a fissure, like a geological formation where the earth is opened up, so it's long and slender. And then we have the optic canal. Okay, so from the name, you know it's going to be near the eye, and the mental foramen. Okay. Now the next group, it has only one structure, and you'll find that it has many different variations in the name. Okay, so it can be called the external auditory meatus, or the external acoustic meatus, or even the external auditory canal. Either of them are perfectly correct. Now the next group has a group of 4 structures: the Foramen Ovale, the Carotid Canal, the Jugular Foramen, and the Foramen Magnum. So foramen can come first. It doesn't always have to come last. Okay. And of course, there's one left, number 12, for the last, and that is called the Olfactory Foramina. Okay. So these are the 12 we have to learn, and now we're going to identify them. Okay. So as in my previous videos, on the left I have a skull, and on the right I have a colored illustration, and between the two we should be able to identify them fairly clearly. Okay, so let's go to the first group. Okay, we have a supraorbital foramen, we have an infraorbital foramen, we have a supraorbital fissure, we have an infraorbital fissure. On here, the supraorbital fissure, and here's the infraorbital fissure. Notice the supraorbital fissure is going up, the infraorbital fissure is going down. Now, very to the medial side of the orbit, we have an opening called the optic canal. So here you can see it clearly here. On this side right here, you don't see it very clearly as well. Okay, and then down here in the mandible, we have the mental foramen, and you see it, they're paired structures. And here, you can see it here. Okay, so let's name them: the supraorbital foramen, the infraorbital foramen, the supraorbital fissure, the infraorbital fissure, and the optic canal, and finally the mental foramen. Okay. Let's go to the next figure. Now, the only new structure in this lateral view is the external auditory canal. Okay, and of course, this is the opening into toward the inner ear. Okay, we also can see the mental foramen here in the mandible. Now in this view, on the internal view of the skull, we can see the internal opening of the external auditory canal. Okay. Okay. And so I'm just showing you that we couldn't potentially identify it from the inside of the skull as well. Now the next figure has the several structures that we named in the next group. Okay, so we have the Foramen Ovale, so it's kind of oval shaped. Here it is right here. Okay, here's the Carotid Canal. Now we barely see the jugular foramen, okay, because it's coming at an angle, and we don't see the angle very well. Okay, and then we have the Foramen Magnum, okay, which essentially means a really big hole, and so this is where your spinal cord and your begins and passes through here. So we have the Foramen Ovale, the Carotid Canal, the jugular foramen, and the Foramen Magnum. Okay. Now we can name the same structures on the inside as well. Okay. But before I forget, we're going to name the new structure, and this was the last one in our list. Okay. Now you see this bone right here in green. Remember, this was the ethmoid bone. Now, if you notice, there's a lot of little holes. Okay, and these are called the olfactory foramina. So on the exam, if we ask you for these holes, your answer is going to be the olfactory foramina. Okay, we can also see some of the other structures in this figure as well. Here's the Foramen Ovale. Okay. The Carotid Canal is not very well seen because it's coming out at an angle. Okay, and the jugular foramen as well is at a poor angle too, but it's here as well. Okay, and then of course the Foramen Magnum. Okay, so these other two structures, or these openings, we don't have to know. Okay, so olfactory foramina, Foramen Ovale. Okay, you see a bit of the Carotid Canal, and here we see part of the jugular foramen. Okay. So one way of learning them is if you find the Foramen Magnum, and then if we ask here, right next to it is the jugular foramen, okay, and on the other side would be the Carotid Canal, and the oval shaped one would be the Foramen Ovale. Okay, and those are the foramina and the fissures and canals of the skull that you need to know for the SCB 203 bone practical exam. Okay.